Yo, what's up guys? A video that's highly requested, how to properly tune your speed buffers and speed boosters. So what's the difference between the two? A speed booster is something that just gives an ATB increase or an attack bar increase. So that could be like a Tiana 30 increase. And your buffers is something that gives the speed buff. And with that speed buff, you get an extra 30% speed. However, you can also manipulate that with artifacts for speed increasing effect. But I'm going to be talking more about that later. For this video, I do recommend you to have like a base understanding of speed ticks. First link in the description down below is going to be the video that I made about speed ticks, but very simply explained about the speed ticks. I will go the moment I go into the speed sheet, because we have a few teams looking at that we're going to give the numbers to. How fast should these units be to follow up without getting cut? Also for a defense example with the chilling, for example, because we do see a lot of like chillings on defense right now, but also in offense. We do see a lot of Adrianas these days, and they are maybe a little bit more difficult for you to speed tune properly. So for that reason, this video. But for the reason to keep like all of them in there, I'm also going to go over some simple teams like a Tiana boost or like a Tion boost, which is slightly different than other things. And then also a boost where you both have a speed buff and a speed boost. So those kind of things. I will be using 3 different kind of tools for this. The first one is the Summoner's War Rune Optimizer. That one is free. We also have the speed sheet, which is also free. That one will also be linked down in the description. And then there is also an upgraded version of the speed sheet, which is by Seiishizo, which is on his SWGT's website, which I will also be showcasing. But the speed sheet is pretty much the same thing. It's just less optimized. So first of all, let's go into a simple Tiana, Galleon, and then a damage dealer. So in this case, I went for Poseidon. For this, I would recommend to use the optimizer because it's just kind of the simplest way to do. For this, we go to the speed tune tab. We would just say in, like, let's say we have a Tiana. Let's say our Tiana is 300 speed. Let's say we go in with a Galleon. Click that one. And then we go in with a Poseidon. And we can simply see here the exact numbers that we will need. So you have to be looking at the minimum speed. So if I want to tune this properly, let's say I make this 235 and then this thing has to be 237 and then it would be tuned already. So those are the only numbers that you have to be looking at. So that is actually pretty simple. I have to give you one thing, that it's not always 100% accurate in this one. So we're going to write the numbers in here right now. And we're going to check them on the speed sheet later if that's actually correct or not. Because it could be that those numbers, which are just written over here, might not be fully correct. And I do know that there's one where it's for sure not correct. So I'm actually going to be changing this team to a team that I do know. Well, let's just put that team in there as well, because I do know that this thing actually gives wrong numbers for it and it is slightly off tune. But let me change that one, because that would be a setup where we actually have my Neftis, my Grogan, and the Hongnyong, and then I mostly use it at something like this, and then this should be a 234. Wait, you can't see that right now. So this should be the 234, which I do know it's not good enough. So we're gonna check this one as, let me just write it with Grogan. So these would be the numbers for this team specifically, but I'm pretty sure that Grogan on this speed can get cut by an enemy. So I do want to definitely double check that. But these are the easiest ways to just check it, like using the Summoner's War Rune Optimizer. There's one thing, however, let's say that you go for the Tion kind of team. So let's say we have a Samath in there. We go for a Tion boost, and we go for a Kabila, and we go for a Lucian. So in this case, let's say that we have a pretty fast Tion on a, let's say, 230-ish. 230, we have the speed lead. Yep, we don't want this thing to move, actually. And then it would already say like, oh, I would need a Tion that's like 293. But that's actually not the case, because in this team specifically, it would be the Kabila moving and then the Tion moving and then Tion boosting the Lucian. And then it's already there. You could give this like a 100 boost, for example, and then this would kind of make sense-ish. But also not really, because it's not boosting this thing. So it's not really, oh, would this actually make sense? It could be that this is the right number right now because it's excluding those things. I'm not sure if it did that in the past, but maybe this 100 boost over here is actually the way that it would fix it, because you can see if you give that 100 boost over here, it goes down to 66, which I think might be the right number that the Tion would need. But let me double check that, because how you would do that is actually the moment that you remove a unit, you can see that the speed ticks go down for how much speed you actually do need. So let's set this back to this. If we reduce it like this, okay, I think the 66 is actually correct, because you can change this number over here to this, and then, yeah, that's exactly correct. So, okay, you don't have to really redo that, so you can just put this to a 100 bar. And it's more focused on like the speed ticks itself, which we'll explain a little bit more about later. So in this case, we would have to be looking at a 340 and then a what was it, 266 on this one if we went for the 100 boost with the other units as well. So that, and then this one is this and this. So that doesn't really matter. So this one we can still do on the optimizer as well. So then the next one, we would have to go for a team with an Asher, Chiwu, Galleon, Poseidon. So let's lock in those. So in this case, these would be the numbers with a Asher that's like 329, and then we have to follow up with the other two units. Thing is with Asher, if I'm not mistaken, it already does take in account for the speed buff, but let's actually check if that is correct, because let's say I put in this unit and I put it at the same speed as the other one. Well, that's actually strange. Why does the Hongyong actually... Could it be that it's just not... yeah, I think that's correct. So the speed buff in this case, it doesn't really show that Asher is doing the speed buff, but in the optimizer, it does give the speed buff for the Asher as well. So in that case, the numbers do look a little different if you were to put it on Asher rather than you putting it on like another unit. So for that reason, the speed buff is already included here. And that's also the thing, like the more units that you have to be in tune, the faster everything kind of has to be. But speed buff kind of like lowers those numbers by quite a bit. I'm not entirely sure if those numbers are correct, but we're going to check that later as well. So let's put them in the notepad right now. This and then 266, this and then this. So those are the numbers that we have over here right now. Oh, you can't really see that. But let's actually look at it, how it would do it for an Adriana. So for an Adriana, let's see if we were to add in Adriana and those kind of units in here. Yeah, that's where we can see that this doesn't suffice for getting those proper speed buffs in, and therefore it doesn't really exactly know like when things are going on. So that's where we see that the optimize is not good enough for actually calculating those. And that's why you definitely have to switch towards the speed sheet. So here, looking at the speed sheet, we see a lot of things about speed ticks and that kind of stuff. I'm going to keep the explanation about speed ticks as short as possible. A speed tick is a calculation in which it checks how much speed a unit has and then how far the attack bar has to be filled. So therefore, you can also overflow attack bar. Therefore, you can also get like half attack bar if the unit is quite a bit slower. But it's also possible to be at like 120 or 150% attack bar. And therefore, if the unit is boosted from 0 to 100, another unit that was 120 still takes that turn because it was already ticking more than before. That's the main question I'm getting, like, oh, why is my Tesha getting cut in the Giants team? Why is my Luna getting cut? Why is my Kyle getting cut after a Kona boost? Because your other units were already at 120 bar, and therefore something else should have taken a turn a tick earlier. Therefore your Kona or your any of those units takes a tick earlier as well, and therefore the bar is not further overfilled on any other unit. So that's, I guess, the most simple explanation I can give. If you want to check a full explanation, check the video down below about that. Besides just having the numbers, because I do know not everyone is that number orientated and they rather have something visual saying like, okay, I still don't really understand the speed ticks. You do have like the turn order one over here, which kind of gives like, okay, which unit moves where and in which tick. But I think this overview is pretty nice, which shows like, okay, at which tick, how much attack bar does every unit have. And then also in the tick 4, we can see like, okay, the Adriana of mine is full, but also their Adriana is full. So this one should have moved, but even the Sonia should have moved in this tick. But since it's not there, we're going to be looking at like, okay, the moment that the Sonia moves, it has like 135 rather than like just 100 attack bar. And that's also where you can see when the Miang moves, it's 162. And then actually where their enemy or the enemy should move, if it's not that, because that's probably part of the team, it was moving at a pace where it's already at 188 attack bar. So those are the kind of things that you can see very nice in the speed tick viewer as well. And it's mainly giving like you some visual cues rather than just seeing like a bunch of numbers and you're like, okay, bunch of numbers, cool shit. Say, I have no clue what I'm looking at. This might help you a little bit more to understand speed ticks as well. But I assume further for this one that you kind of understand like how speed ticks work. And we're just going to go from that assumption. So to look back at previous teams, we're first going to quickly check if I add in those previous teams, if they were correct in the optimizer or not. So these are the numbers for the speed for the Tiana Galleon and the Poseidon, as we also had in the speed in the other sheet. And in this case, we would have to give attack bar to all of those units, and that's going to be 30 on those. And in here, we can see that we do outspeed it. In the speed sheet, I always go for an enemy that is the exact same speed as you are as well. So I would go for a Tiana kind of base speed with the same speed, with the same everything. And then we check it out if we actually still outspeed all of those units that we see over here before the enemy moves over here. And we can see that we're just by the sliver of A to B fast enough for all of those. We were actually able to tune this one down by 1 speed as well. So it could be actually 1 speed lower than the speed sheet was giving on the other one. So that's where you can check that a little bit of more fine tuning on this one does show that it works a little bit better than the other one, because this one technically could be -1 speed on this one, which I think the other one did show. It could be that it also showed in that one. But I'm more curious about this one, because the Hongyeong and the Grogan, I have been cut by like Tritons and that kind of stuff. So gonna be checking how this one works out for this. Okay, so those are the speeds, if I'm not mistaken. And let's see if we add in all of those boosts for the 15 first. So 15 on everyone. Then we're going to give a 30 later on everyone as well. And we do see that the Grogan is actually 1 speed too slow. And that's the thing that we can see by rounding the numbers incorrectly, that they're slightly a little bit of like literally 0.08 too slow, where the Grogan should have been 137 rather than 136, and therefore it was getting cut. So with the rounding of numbers, I can see that the Summoners War Rune Optimizer sometimes is kind of wrong with it, and that this should actually be the proper speed for it. So we can check the other ones as well, but I think that this one kind of is the same thing. It could be 1 number higher or lower based on like the rounding of stuff, so that doesn't matter all too much. But this one, however, this one is slightly different, and this one is also more manipulative by also adding in like speed increasing effect on your artifacts, but we're going to talk about that in a second. Let's first put in those numbers. Okay, so the numbers are set in, so now we just have to apply the speed buffs in this case. So 15 on all of them, but you can already see that the 15 of all of them is not going to be fast enough to actually make the units properly cut, because we also have to add in the speed buff. So in this case, you would also have to add in the speed buff, and it's just, let's say, the 30%. And then we can see that those units start getting cut. So let's see if we can simply copy this. We can do it like this, copy, copy. And then we once again see that by the sliver of speed tuning, we once again miss 1 extra speed on the Poseidon to actually cut there as well, and to have it properly move. We do also see, oh wait, I have made this one a little bit too slow, but like these speeds on those things may matter a little bit less. But here's when you can see that it also does matter. But we also added in a speed buff of 30 right now. How the speed increasing effect works is, let's say you add in 10% speed increasing effect, you're not going to make this to a 40, you would actually make this to a 33. So for example, if we have a 39 over here, that would mean I give 30% in speed increasing effects. Keep in mind that speed increasing effect is a 6 roll, so you would have to get a full-on maxed out legendary on one side, or you have to split it between 2 sides of 15, for example. But you can definitely notice, like, let's say we put the Poseidon on full on 39s. So let's say we put it full on 39. We can see that how much speed increase it went over here. And it also does mean that we can lower the number of the speed that the Poseidon had by quite a lot. Let's see how far we can drag it down. Can we drag it down more? No, this. So we can see that we can drag down the speed of the Poseidon by 9 speed, because we added 30 speed and speed increasing effect on his artifact. So that's definitely a nice interaction where you could say, like, okay, speed increasing artifacts, especially on units that have speed scaling damage, such as a Shimete, such as a Leia, such as a Poseidon itself as well. Speed increasing artifacts become pretty interesting if you also goes for those speed buff all the time. However, there's a few units that you actually probably need to focus on that speed buff, because, for example, let's start tuning that Sonia Adriana plus Miang that everyone likes to use in Siege offense. Okay, in this case, we had the speed of the Adriana at the 220. Sonia and Miang are just set at like random numbers for now, or let's add in the speed buffs for all of those units, and let's do it for just 2 ticks. So in this case, we can already see that a Sonia on a 180 is not going to be able. Let's say if we go 190, then we're enough to outspeed an Adrian on the same speed. So minimum speed on this is a little bit like just checking back and forth, adding in a number, changing the number. We can see that we need a 187. But if we want to make Miang perfectly tuned on this, we actually have to build a pretty fast Miang. We already have to be looking at like 200 speed. Is that actually like me guessing the number exactly right? Yeah, that was me guessing the number exactly right. But 200 speed on the Miang might be something that you would say is quite a lot. So were we once again to say like, okay, let's say we go for like full 44% speed increasing effect. That means, I did the math before, it's something around the lines of you having like 40 or 24 on one side, 24 on the other side. So that's max triple heroes on both sides. But were we to add in those 44s, we could actually slow down the speed of Miang probably by quite a lot. Let's see how much we can slow that down. We can slow it down by 14 speed. So in that 14 speed that we don't have to put in there, we can put extra crit damage, we can put extra other stuff. My Miang in normally case is something along the lines of 192 and then has a bunch of speed increasing effects because she has that speed scaling in there. So it's definitely one of those useful things. And that's also then the number that we could write down for here, for example. So in this case, it would look something along the lines of this. So this is the speeds that we need if we don't go for any of the speed increasing effect or speed increasing effect on Miang, and then we have to go for this speed. So that's definitely where you can see and also see how to calculate those numbers of how much speed do you need and how the manipulation of your speed buff is working with the speed increasing artifacts. Now, another example is going to be the chilling Clara, which is mainly for defense. We do see that a bunch of defense or just chilling on defense plus another other bunch of things. And chilling is a little bit different because chilling has a certain speed, but he also gets speed from his passive. So let's look in at a chilling. So for this example, we're gonna have a Clara chilling defense. Let's add in a Camilla and let's add in a Savannah. So we do want to have the chilling moving first, then we want to have the Clara following up, and then we want to have the Savannah moving. So in this case, let's first off start with the base speeds. Okay, let's say we have a 200 chilling. Your chilling is on Swift and Will, so because of the Will, he gets another 19 and a half speed from the passive. And because any of the other units is on shield, he gets another 19 and a half. So the way to add in the passive from chilling, I just add the number in here. I think that's the easiest way. I think that's pretty much the only way to properly calculate it. So we're going to be looking at a chilling that is actually by runes 239. It is actually plus 200, but because of the speed buff, but because of the will and because of the shield, he gets 19 and a half speed per extra buff. He becomes 39 extra, and therefore we put him at 239. Okay, let's add in the speed buff for all of the units in, let's say, the first 4 ticks or for everyone. And let's see how much speed we would need on a Clara to actually make the Clara in tune. And this is going to be insane because I would probably need a Clara that is, okay, 215, still decent number. Okay, so 215 on the Clara, which is already a pretty fast set because if you keep in mind, the chilling is just on a 200 set. Where we make the chilling on, let's say the chilling is actually on an insane set. Let's say the chilling is no longer a 200 set, but the chilling becomes a 220 set, which is possible. So we have a 220 set on the chilling. So how fast do we need this Clara to follow up on a 220? So even a 220 for the Clara is not enough. We need like a 230, no, more than 230. We need about a 238 for the Clara. Wait, okay, a little bit lower. Okay, we need about a 234 on the Clara to follow up on the chilling that's plus 220. Which is an insane set. So a lot of people, that's definitely what you see on defense a lot. You see the chilling moving first and then all of the others are not tuned. So how can we kind of fix this? Well, you can kind of fix it with having good speed increasing artifacts. However, it's just for 1 tick. As you can see, it's just 1 tick that Clara is able to move. And for that reason, we can kind of lower this number by a little bit. So let's see how much further we can lower it to 27. 6 still fine, 5 still fine, that is not allowed, 4, okay, so we need this. So it is still crazy fast, so that's definitely something to keep in mind. If you make a chilling super fast, to make your units follow up is very difficult because you already need 25 extra speed on your Clara while having pretty much a 24 and 24, which are max triples on both artifacts of speed increasing effect, to actually follow up on that. So for that reason, chilling is very nice on defense. These defenses are definitely very nice, but you have to keep in mind that you need pretty good artifacts if it's just 1 tick of that speed buff, because she only gets the speed buff in the 4th tick, and then there's only 1 tick where it actually can roll on that higher number that it has. Because if we were to look at a Savannah, which is a lot higher on the base speed, let's say we want to make this one in tune as well, and we are going to use, let's say, no artifacts yet. So let's say if we just use it over here, we still need a pretty fast Savannah as well. Let's say, how fast do we go? Okay, 215. With 215, we're in speed range. But let's say we put the 44 for 2 ticks on the Savannah as well. Then we can see that the number became a lot higher, and probably we can drop it down to like 200 or even less than that. So that's definitely a interesting thing. 200 was exactly the number. So yeah, that's definitely an interesting thing, that units that move later, they have more value from speed increasing effect than units that move earlier. But it is still recommended to keep these numbers as high as possible, because in the end, like if your Clara needs 225 and your chilling moves first, you might as well slow down your chilling and then be able to speed up that Clara, because if your chilling is moving but nothing is moving afterwards, then probably their chilling is moving. And if they are in better tune because they have a faster unit to move after the chilling, you're still going to be losing. So that's something you have to keep in mind with the chilling defenses, which does look pretty cool. It's like, oh, my chilling is moving at like 360 speed. Yeah, cool and all, but then you also need your Clara on a 328 with a 44, so technically a 48 speed increase effect. So yeah, that's just something you have to keep in mind, that is a little bit difficult for the tuning. So that is pretty much all there is, except for one thing, which is a offense that I get pretty often a question about, like, how is it working? I mainly use the Ian in this position, but for free-to-play style, or more free-to-play-ish style, because you still have to get a Jamire, you can use a Covenant, you can use a Taru, you could use, or is it Taru? No, it's not Taru. The other thing, like the imp thing that also hits, I think maybe it's Taru. I don't know, I don't care. But Kali doesn't fit that well, but anything that single target snipes, like just damage dealer. Covenant is probably the easiest one out there. So let's look at how this team would work. So in this case, the turn order is as following. So for the people that don't really know this team, you have a Jamire S1 into a Homu S3 on damage dealer, into a to B reset. Then we would have the damage dealer do S3. We would have the Jamire do S3. We have the Homu S3 on self, which is another A to B reset. Then we have the Homu S2 doing it at the damage dealer. And then we have damage dealer S3 with attack off. So that's how the team works. So with all of that said, how would that look like in speed tuning? Well, the thing is, it would reset the attack bar, and therefore it doesn't really show perfectly in speed tuning, but we're going to go through each of the steps. So the first step is going to be this: Jamire moving first, then the homunculus. So therefore, the homunculus is also the one that we're going to be speed tuning towards. So we're also going to use the speed of the homunculus for the enemy speed, keeping that in mind. So let's say we make the enemy speed 210, and we make our homunculus 210. So we have the 210s on the homunculus. We need to make a Jamire faster than that. So let's say 205, that's already faster than that. I would recommend it to keep it like above 200, that you're moving in the fourth tick. It helps out a little bit as well. So we have the homunculus moving over here. Then we could say, like, okay, does the Covenant need 0 speed? Well, the thing is, no, Covenant doesn't need 0 speed, because if we put like 0 speed to Covenant and we get the attack bar reset, but the attack bar reset gives the unit that we targeted on speed buff. So for that reason, rather than in the fourth tick we start off with speed buff, we start off speed buff on the Covenant since tick 1. So since tick 1, we actually have it that all the way through, Covenant will have speed buff. So if we go 0 speed on Covenant, we can still see that Covenant is moving like all the way on the right over here. So we do need like some speed on the Covenant, which I think is around like 140. Is that too fast? Let's see, because it actually has to outspeed both of the units. So in this case, it would have to be 142, 143, 144, 144. So yeah, that is something that you can keep in mind. Like if you were to make the Jamire slower, but your Jamire still moves in front of the Homu, then yes, that is something that could work. If you actually make it a tick slower, would it actually make sense to make him a tick slower? Because then you could have everything move quite a bit slower. Is that an option? I'm not sure. I would just kind of try to keep like things fast as possible as well, because in the end, you're gonna get outsped by other things as well. So yeah, kind of making it fast does make some sense. So in this case, we can see that we need a Covenant on 144 speed to outspeed that Jamire as well. We could add in some speed increasing effects to that homunculus, or we could add in some speed increasing effect to that Covenant, but it's not a damage dealer by speed, so it's a little bit less interesting. I'd rather have those damage things on a crit damage skill 3 or anything like that, because in the end, we will have the damage dealing here with skill 3 without an attack buff. So for that reason, we can see that a 144 on the Covenant is fast enough for this whole team to actually lab properly and then do the skills properly, because we can see the moment that the A to B reset happened, that is where this happens. So because of this happening, the Covenant will actually move first rather than last, because if we were to copy this whole stuff, let's copy this one, we can see that the Covenant moves less. So the first time around, it's going to be this. Then we have the Covenant on speed buff, which is going to be looking like this over now for this position. So then we have the homunculus using S3 on self, which also means the homunculus will get speed buff. And therefore, we can see that in the final state, the homunculus will be able to move first as well because of also having a speed buff after a full reset. And then we have the possibility to do the S2, so the attack buff on the damage dealer. And then the damage dealer can go for a skill 3 with the damage buff. So that is how the team works, also explained within the speed checks and all of that kind of stuff as well. If there's a few more teams that you would like to see, like, oh, you addressed some of those teams, but I know a few teams that are very different than the teams that you showcased, I might do a follow-up video on this one, but I do think that most of the speed tuning that you have out there, which is mainly the speed buff or the speed boost, is in the video here right now. However, I did mention one thing. There is an upgraded version of this speed sheet as well, which is in the SWGT. So SWGT made by Seiishizo. It also has the speed tick bracket calculator in here. That's over here. And it's pretty much the same thing. It's only an easier way to work with it. Let's say that we go back for the team with the, let's say we go for a Sonia team. So we go for a Sonia. We add in a Miang. The easy thing about this is that it doesn't have to give me all of the exact speed numbers itself, or I don't have to memorize or look up like the base numbers. This thing already knows all of the base numbers, so that's a lot easier. Adriana, we add in those, and we add this in twice because we're also going to be checking one on the other team, one on our own team. We were looking at something like 220-ish, 220-ish, and this thing was, I think it was along this line, something like that. All of these units are on Swift, and then we can check out the numbers over here. So looks a little bit daunting at first, but it's the same as the other thing pretty much. The only thing that we can do easier here is where you saw me like change the numbers back and forth quite a bunch, is where you can just add like +10s and -1s and +5s just to get into the number where we can see like, okay, once again, we need the 200. If we go -2, we see like the numbers instantly jump back and forth, which just makes this a little bit easier, and you have like a few other things. You can make save states on that. And let's say you want to add in the speed buff. So these are the numbers. Wait, does it actually make sense? I think I didn't add speed buff on. Yep, I was like, why does this make sense already? Because the speed lead, I didn't add in the speed lead or for the enemy Adriana yet, because we still have to add in the speed multiplier. So we have speed buff. And we can add in the speed buff over here, and then we would start seeing that we still need a little bit more speed, don't we? Yep, we need 2 more speeds, and then we're fine on that one. But rather than calculating how much speed increasing artifacts are on the unit itself, I can just simply say here, like, okay, I got a 48 speed increasing artifact on the Miang, and therefore I can start lowering it, and I can just click it down to lower that number. So in the end, is this a lot better? I would say it does the same thing. It just makes it a little bit easier. There's a lot more stuff to it than just this speed calculator. I will leave a link to the YouTube channel of Seiishizo, which is all about the SWGT, in the description down below as well. So if you want to check it out, it's a lot of stuff of like checking how your rune progression is, what are your best artifacts, what are your best runes, where to put grinds, like a lot of that kind of stuff is in there. If you want me to make a video on this whole tool, let me know it in the comments as well. Might do that as well. So guys, that's all there is for this video. Hope you find it useful. If you did, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Also, let me know in the comments if there's any specific guides where you would like me to make videos on. There's very good options where I would just reply you a video because I already made the guide. I think I made a lot of guides about a lot of stuff already, but this was one of those topics I haven't fully yet. So also, if you want to learn more about speed ticks specifically, video in the link down below as well. And that's all there is to it for this video, guys. Thanks a lot for watching. I'll see you as always in the next one. Thanks for watching. If you would like to see more guides, join the Discord and check out the content tab, which has the dungeon guide archive and the video guide archive, which contains all of the guides that you need. Hope to see you there.